AngularJS. So I have a relevant experience of Angular, like 3+ years experience of Angular, and then I hold skills of Angular, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then Angular material. I have used in our current project in our organization. We are using Angular framework with Angular material as the CSS framework.
Okay. So which company you are working?
It's TCS.
Pardon me?
TCS, Tata Consultancy Services,
Which location?
Bangalore.
Okay. In Bangalore, which location?
It's in Whitefield. It's in Global Access Technological Park.
Okay. Yeah. Whitefield, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Can you give me difference between Angular and AngularJS?
Yeah, AngularJS was, one of the, initial frameworks developed by Google. That was the most earlier framework, or you can say that, from where Angular has, got a birth. But later, there were many, complications and many performance issues with that framework that was not, up to the date. So what Google has done is Google has taken that framework and it has, completely rewritten the framework, and now from then it has been called as Angular, Angular 2, and thereby Angular 3, 4, and so on.
Okay. So can you give me some more difference like architectural, expression language, routing? So which one is better? AngularJS or Angular?
I think Angular is better because with respect to me, I have only used Angular. Never used AngularJS.
Okay.
So I've been working with Angular 7, with version
Okay.
from 7. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. So what are the scope of Angular?
Sorry, scope of?
What is the scope in Angular?
Scope in Angular. I mean, okay, I see Angular is, since it is a single page application, right?
Yeah.
Its it only holds only one HTML file, index.html. So Angular, renders all the components within this particular index.html. Whenever you inspect if you have an Angular web application, launched in a browser, and when you right click and inspect it, you will only find only one HTML page. And whenever you navigate through, the navigation happens only through routing. So routing in the sense the component, the DOM is, in the real time, it is changed. It is rendered in the real time.
Okay. So what is the directives in Angular?
Okay, directives. So we have, three type of directives in Angular. So basically, the first one, obviously it is the component. So we have component directives. It is a directive, where you will have your HTML template along with it. And the next thing, the examples are, the Angular component itself, which has this HTML template attached with it. The other type of directive is structural directive, where we have, ng4, ng switch, all these directives, which will control the, rendering of the DOM elements. So whenever you specify these directives on a particular element, so that directive will control how the elements, will decide whether that element should be shown or rendered on the UI or not. So that is, structural directives in action. And then we have attribute or attribute directives. Attribute directives, are directives which we can apply it to the attributes of the element. Let's say you have a div. Okay, you have a div and you have a class attribute. So you can bind the class attribute, to have an, you can control the class attribute with the bindings. Let's say you bind with class, and then you bind id property to dynamically assign id to an element. You have style, ng style, all those directives.
Okay.
Attributes.
Yeah, I got it. So what are the data binding?
Yeah, so data binding, it is a feature in Angular, from where you can bind data from the component to the HTML, and from HTML to the back to the component. Component in the sense the TS file. So let's say you have the example. One of the example is ng model. Okay, so ng model is a directive where you can attach, let's say there is a input element, okay, in your HTML. So you want to bind it. You want, there is a variable in your TS, let's say some variable, okay, a name variable, and you want to bind this name variable to the input property, so that the whatever the value present in the name variable in TS, it should be reflecting, or it should be appearing in the input text box. So how do you do it? On the input element you write ng model, and with the square brackets, you wrap the ng model within square brackets, and then equal to, and within that quotes you will be writing the variable name. So here the our variable is name, so within the quotes you will be writing name. So whenever there is a change in the name, the change will be automatically reflected in your input text box. The other way, from the HTML to CSS, with the parentheses, you with ng model wrapped with parentheses, so that you can send events from HTML to the TS file.
Okay, so can you give me life cycle hooks of Angular?
Yeah. So basically we have 8 lifecycle hooks. So there are 8 lifecycle hooks in Angular. So we start with ng on changes, ng on init. Then we have ng do check, ng after content init, ng after content check, ng after content to view. Ng after view init, ng after view check, and then at the last we have ng on desktop.
So so you have life cycle hooks on constructor also there, no?
Yes, we have a see constructor. Basically it is by a default method of a component, wherein it gets invoked whenever your component gets initialized, or whenever your component gets instantiated. So basically, yeah, constructor, then ng do ng on changes, ng on init, and then it all goes.
But it will come total 9, no? Total 9 hooks.
I mean, yeah, you can say, you see, in the official, like some developers or some websites says constructor is a lifecycle hook, and some refer it as a default method. So basically we'll be having 8 hooks. If you include constructor as a hook, then that is not a issue.
Okay, so how you develop the code in Angular? Are you using Studio or some other? How you develop?
Oh, we use Visual Studio Code mostly.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. So can you write one small application like logic, like login module? So take username and password as the key inputs, and you can pass it on the controller. Just you can display with validation.
Okay, should I?
Yeah, you
should I
can
create
share
an
this.
Angular project?
Yeah, Angular one.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
login page.
Okay,
So you have Studio, right, in your application, in your laptop?
Yeah, I have. Yes, I have Visual Studio.
Yeah, sure.
I have share my screen. I mean, is it?
Yeah, I
visible?
can see you. Yeah, yes, it is visible for you.
Okay. Should I create a new application, or should I pick an existing one?
So as you are convinced, you can pick existing one or new one. I don't mind. Just I want to see the login page with validation. That's it.
Okay. All right. I'll go with this. Sorry, laptop is a little slow.
Yes.
I mean, my laptop is a little slow, so yeah.
Yeah, no problem. No, you can take time.
Sure. Yeah. Suresh, so I have to, create a login form, right?
Yeah, correct. Login form which having username and password. Just
Okay.
on submit, you can send to the data into controller. Just display it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Uh, Hello, Suresh.
Yes, tell me.
Yeah, Suresh. Uh, I have logged it in the console.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and submit.
yeah, on submit, you can see. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So, so on submit, the value you should send somewhere.
I mean, see, from this HTML, I'm passing it to the controller here on login,
Okay.
and this is the form.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No problem. Can you stop sharing? So,
Yeah, sure.
okay. Okay, you worked on Node.js also.
No,
Node.js.
not really. Yeah, but I
Okay.
have worked on Strappy, which is a Node.js framework. Only basics of Strappy. Strappy is a middleware, like
Okay.
your backend service. Yeah, not
Okay.
more than.
Okay. No problem. So, how you can do the bootstrap in Angular?
Okay, so in the whenever you want to, every Angular application, it should have at least one, module, one module which consists of, many components.
Okay.
So here in our Angular, whenever you create a Angular, there is a different module created, app module. So you can
Okay.
bootstrap it, within. If you go into your main.ts file, you will have something called, a dynamic module dot bootstrap. So wherein you can, pass in your app module or whatever your
Okay.
module you want to bootstrap. Yeah.
Okay. No problem. So, what is the difference between link and compile in Angular?
Sorry, Lincoln,
Compiler.
link and compiler. See, compiler will compile your code, build your code, and it will generate your Angular compile code, Angular compile code into a folder called dist. So every
Mm.
Angular project will have a dist folder, wherein you will have one more folder with your project name. So
Mm.
within that, folder, you'll find all the compiled bundle files in your,
Okay.
in your folder, all the JS files.
Okay. Okay, no problem. So, what is the difference between a provider, service, and factory in Angular?
Okay, services are nothing but classes which are decorated with a injectable decorator. Whenever you decorate a class with a injectable, Angular in its lifetime will create only one instance of that particular service file. So you'll have, if you wherever you refer your within your Angular application, wherever you refer, right, you will only find one instance of that particular service. So those are called services. So providers are, within providers, within providers you can specify what type of dependency you want to inject at in your components. You will provide it in your in your ng module in the providers array. And the yeah, the factory method, so with the factory, you can create components with the factory methods of Angular, or you can inject services with factory methods.
Okay. Okay. So, so if your model is updated outside zone, explain the process how it we can view.
Okay, we have to inject ng zone in Angular through constructor, and with that ng zone will expose something called run, a method called run. So within that run method, you can always write your code which you want to execute outside Angular, outside Angular environment.
Okay. So explain ng application directive in Angular.
ng sorry,
ng app.
ng app.
Mm.
So can you rephrase the question? I mean, I didn't.
So explain ng app directives in Angular.
Okay, ng app directive.
Yeah, you can use this for auto bootstrap now in your Angular application.
Okay.
Okay, no
Sure.
problem.
No.
So how to
Yeah, I
insert
mean,
the
I
embedded
totally
view in template reference?
embedded view in template reference.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a component. You mean injecting a component in another component?
Yes. Yeah,
So
that's correct.
okay. So you let's say you have component A and component B. Okay. And inside A you want to render component B. So you have to refer the selector of component B. Okay, which you can find in the decorator in the TS file. So the selector you have to refer the selector like how I used the login selector, right? If you have seen. So you have to pick the selector and place it in the HTML of the component A. So therein, Angular will render out that particular component.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you know, right, how we can asynchronous communication with the REST application with Angular?
Yes. Yeah. We will be using HTTP client module. So we have to first inject we have to first import the HTTP client module in our app module in the imports array. Okay. The first step. The next step is in basically we extract out these REST API calls into services rather than putting them into components. So that is the best practice. So in our service, we can write a method. Let's say we want to invoke a get API, get REST API. So let's say we will implement a method. Sorry, we'll implement a method get users. Okay, so this get users will return an observable. So how do we implement this in services? First, we'll inject the HTTP client class. So through the constructor. Okay. Now, when we have this reference of the HTTP class, so let's say the reference is HTTP. So we will use this dot HTTP dot get and we'll return this. So the whole method will be get users, and inside this method we'll be writing return this dot HTTP dot get, and within the parentheses we'll be mentioning the URL.
Okay.
The REST API URL.
Okay.
And then we whenever you see the purpose of returning this dot HTTP dot get is this dot HTTP dot get will give you an observable so that you can subscribe it to in your component. Let's say since you have returned this, right, return this dot HTTP dot get from this component, you'll inject this service in one component. Okay, and then you call out this dot service dot and then get users and then dot subscribe. So your API call will only invoke when you subscribe. Unless you subscribe, your API call will not be invoked.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So your application is single page application, right?
Yes.
How it is work in 3 different areas like desktop, laptop, and tab and mobile?
Yes. So we can control the responsiveness of our particular Angular application based on our different devices which have different resolutions. Say we can I have used Angular Flex library, which is provided by Angular itself. So this library will give us methods through which we can control like which element to be rendered on which device and how it should be rendered. So Angular Flex will internally implement the Flex layout, so through which we can control the rendering of our elements and position of our elements. So Angular Flex, this Flex, exposes some of the methods. Let's say, for example, if you want an input element to be displayed on a mobile but not on desktop. So the same element you can add a directive which is exposed by the Angular Flex material, which is called fx flex hide. So if you want to hide this particular element on desktop, so how do you write it on? You add the directive fx flex dot hide dot sm, sorry, dot lg. So since lg refers to larger devices which include laptops, you know and bigger laptops and all. So this is how you control the responsiveness.
Okay. Okay. Mm, you heard about just-in-time compiler ahead of time compiler, right?
Yes, yes.
So what is difference?
Yeah, so just-in-time compiler will compile your code whenever your browser will request to, the server to give the files. Yeah, so whenever you hit an URL, your request will go to the server. The server will give you all the JS HTML files related to this to your application. So whenever those files are coming to your browser, with just-in-time compiler, the code will be compiled in your browser at that point. So it will result in slow rendering of your application. It will give you very what you can say, not a very good user experience whenever you have all those files coming in your browser and then gets compiling. It takes time, and then after some time the UI will be projected on you on the browser. So this is what happens with just in time compiler. So with AOT, with ahead of time compiler, this is the latest one provided in Angular. So what happens is your code gets compiled before your what do you say, your browser render out to the screen. So this will save time. So whenever you request, whenever your browser will request to the server, the file gets compiled, and it travels to the browser, and then immediately since they are compiled, there will be a very less time, to load the screen. So this is how it will provide a very good experience for the user.
Okay. Um, so you worked on JavaScript also, right?
Yes, yes.
So what is the difference between JavaScript and TypeScript?
Okay. TypeScript is nothing but a superset of JavaScript, wherein TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, meaning whenever you write code in TypeScript, your code, will not be, compiled to .ts. It will always be compiled to .js files ultimately. So, only browsers will understand only JS and CSS files. So whenever you have TypeScript file, those will be those will be transpiled to JavaScript code for the
Okay.
browsers to understand. So whenever you
So
find
which one is good, man? Which one is good, TypeScript or JavaScript?
I mean, TypeScript is better because TypeScript will implement to OOPS concept, so object-oriented programming. So wherein we can declare classes, we can have objects, we can have interfaces to be implemented. We can have classes that can extend the other classes. All those OOPS concept we can implement in TypeScript. But with the native JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript, we cannot do such things.
Okay, good, good.
And with
Yeah,
TypeScript
man.
also we
So
have type.
yeah, that's fine. So I completed my interview. Do you have any question?
Yeah, I mean, if if I get selected, what is the project that I'm gonna work on?
Yeah, so actually we selected from the pool. So once you allocated, so project will get allocated based on the requirements within the pool. You know,
Oh,
right? Pool is reserved for
yes,
the
yes,
candidate who is selected with Angular.
yes,
So
yes.
we'll find out the suitable project, so
Hmm.
we can assign to you.
Okay, so I will be working for a client, right? I mean, if, that is what
Okay,
I'm right?
okay.
Okay,
Yeah, you can work. So yeah, that is not issue.
all right.
Yeah. Thank you your time, Satish. Yeah. Bye bye.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Suresh. Thank you,
Yeah,
having.
thank you. Bye bye. Have a nice